Hey, so we're back on day 2 of trying to get the Mustang out of the barn. Turns out that all the wheels are seized. We're gonna open up, we're gonna go see what we find, so. That doesn't look too bad. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Woo! Ooh! So this is a 1968 Mustang Coupe. First impressions, I like what I see. Probably gonna need the key. Oh, this is great. Something's been living here. It's not a house, it's a car. First impressions, I think that the car is in phenomenal shape for having sat here for 30 years. We're going to be spending some time today trying to get some drums off so that we can get this sucker rolling and actually pull it out, rather than trying to drag it with more force than is necessary that could damage the car. So going around over here, you know, we've already got it started to be jacked up. Both wheels were seized, which tells us that it was not a transmission problem and not a parking brake problem, because the front wheel is independent of both of those. So that's where we're starting. We've already taken the wheel off. We put it back on just to make sure that everything was safe. We've got the drum most of the way off, and we're going to be spending the rest of this morning getting the other wheels off, getting the drums off, and trying to get them to loosen up. All right, so we finally got the first drum off. It actually went pretty quickly this morning. We came back with a little bit better equipment to get the job done right. So for all of you out there with old Mustangs, this might be a lifesaver getting drums off. I'll show you how. So if you look through the owner's manual, the maintenance manual from 1968, it's a real big, thick book. It also covers the Cougar, the Fairlane, a few other cars. I highly recommend that you consider getting one. On these front drum brakes, the shoes themselves have a tensioner between them. Whoops. Well, they have a tensioner between them. That's this guy right here. And it has a compression spring that goes on the end that keeps it in place. And it's adjusted from the backing plate via this little slot back here. Sometimes this slot has a rubber cover, sometimes it doesn't. But regardless, it's designed to have either a tool or a screwdriver to adjust the tension between the two. So the farther out that you push this screw, the more it's going to push the shoes out, and the more it's going to lock up the brake. And that's why we couldn't get it off, because up here on the top it had too much tension and it was grabbing the drum. So what we did is we came in from the backside using a screwdriver, and we screwed it in so that the tension on those shoes was reduced, and the drum just came right off. So it's pretty hard to tell from the manual and from the forums online, so hopefully a lot of you find this pretty helpful now that you actually have a visual aid. So we're going to go around to the other wheels, and we're going to start taking care of that.
A few moments later. 2 hours later.
So after learning our mistakes with the first hub and banging on it for what seemed like forever, we were able to take the second hub off much more easily using that tensioner mechanism in the back. It is very difficult to access, particularly when you're in a dark barn with no way to jack up the car, the tires are flat, and rat poop everywhere. So I do recommend you find a more ideal situation than we did in order to get those hubs off. So after we got the first two off, we weren't able to access the other two because of their proximity to the wall. We had no way of getting back there. So we decided to pull the car out. So we were able to get the car out. Obviously, as you may have noticed from one of the shots in there, that one of the wheels did not want to come free. The shoes just were so seized on there that they didn't come off. And that was that back left. So we ended up just having to drag it. But we did pull the car away and we pulled it over to be pressure washed and get the 33 years of rat crap off of it and to make it a little bit nicer to inspect and check out. So we finally got the car out of the barn and got her all cleaned off. Now we're going to see if we can get her to turn over. Battery, of course, sitting for 30 years was no good, so took that out, put in a new battery. Turns out that battery was also dead, but at least it's able to carry a charge and a current. So we've got the Suburban hooked up, the jumper cable's going, we're letting it charge. We were able to find out that we were getting power to the vehicle at least, because turn on the lights, turn on the blinkers, and we were able to get a little bit of life out of those. So hopefully in the next go we'll be able to see if the starter's good and if it'll start to turn over. We were having a little bit of trouble getting the main crank to turn a little bit. The the water pump wasn't frozen though, so that's a good sign. So hopefully we won't run into any issues, but we'll see where we land. So while we wait for the battery to charge, we've been checking a couple other things out. Checked out the oil. You know, we had looked at that earlier, but it was in dim light, so it was hard to see. But pulling it out, now it's black, which is not unexpected. But still viscous, not seeing any metal shavings, so looks like the engine hasn't dried out. We're about to check the antifreeze in there, make sure that hasn't dried out, leaked out. Check the hoses, etc. So hopefully the hose seems in pretty decent shape. So I don't think that these are the original factory hoses that were in 1968. Judging from the look of it, there's a couple of parts that have been serviced and changed over the years. I'm looking at the coil. I don't think that's a factory coil. So the coil's down here. That's this guy right here. The coil is responsible for delivering the available charge to the distributor, which then, as the name suggests, distributes the spark to the various spark plugs in cylinders 1 through 6 in the appropriate order. The AC is not hooked up to the belt, but we don't need that. Like I said, the fan is able to turn freely, which means the water pump is able to flow. And the hoses, you know, they're not stiff. They look like they'll carry fluid just fine. Popping open the radiator. Let's see what we got here. There we go. So, looking down in there, you know, it's nice, clean, green fluid. Doesn't look like it's separated or anything. Obviously, there's a bunch of scale in there. I think back in the day that these radiators were steel, they weren't aluminum. So, rusting could be a bigger issue. I but I think it's going to be okay. You know, just to get it to turn over for the first few seconds, you don't really need the coolant. It doesn't, an engine's not going to heat up that fast in the first 3 seconds, especially not this little 3.3 liter straight 6. So far, all signs point to good. Alright, so we weren't able to get the engine started, but that's okay. We've actually had a very successful 2 days here. Managed to find the car, get it out of the barn, get it over here, get it nice and washed, and check everything out. And everything is looking great on this car, so I am very excited to get it back to Colorado. So it's going to be a couple of days for us to schedule the shipping to get it here, get it on a truck, and get it back to Colorado. As soon as it does, we'll start filming again to show us working on the car even more. So, you know, like I said, very successful trip. I am super stoked about this. I cannot wait to get it back. Talk to Cody and the other guys to get their thoughts on it. But in the meantime, you know, stay tuned, and we'll see you next time. Hey everybody, and thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Engine Gremlin. If you like what you saw and you like what we do, please consider liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. It helps us make better quality content and on a more regular basis, and I would really, really like to hire an editor someday. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram. Links are down in the description. And please consider donating to our Patreon page, like our YouTube channel. It helps us make better quality content on a regular basis, and ultimately it's going to help us make a better quality car in the end. So, like I said, thank you guys so much again for watching this week's episode. I will see you guys next time.